Well, the U.S. government is at this hour inching toward a partial shutdown as Congress has so far failed to pass a spending bill. Congressional leaders met with President Trump yesterday. They tried to hash out a deal, didn't work. Now we're tracking what a shutdown could mean for the U.S. economy. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joining us live now to have that conversation from New York. So what's at stake here for the American taxpayer if the government shuts down, Kelly?
So, Reed, I like to think of this in three different buckets: what it means for the consumer, what it means for a federal worker, and then what it means for the economy at large. So let's start with the consumer. I think there's a lot of questions about, am I still going to receive my Social Security check, my Medicare benefits? I want to allay those fears. Those programs are funded by congressional funding that has already been approved. It has nothing to do with what both sides are arguing over right now. So you will still receive those types of programs. That being said, things that require access to government agencies, maybe you're applying for a passport or a national flood insurance, those things are going to be impacted. So I would say exercise a little bit of patience there. When it comes to the federal worker, you have essential and then non-essential. Now, essential are folks like your TSA agents. Of course, they are going to have to continue working through the shutdown because they are considered essential to national security. And then you're going to have folks like maybe in the parks that are considered non-essential. Both of those sets of people will get back pay, but the reason why I bring up when it comes to an impact, I mean, just because someone's going to receive back pay, that doesn't help them when they have to pay rent, when they have to pay a credit card bill. Right. And we have heard from countless federal workers that they might be having to dip into savings. And of course, that creates a lot of ramifications from their own financial picture that could be long lasting. And then finally, the economy. On average, EY Parthenon, they came up with an estimate. The U.S. economy would lose $7 billion per week, every week that the government is shut down. That equates to roughly 0.1% of GDP. So when you put it into that context, it's not a ton when it comes to the U.S. economy. And I will mention that once things reopen, you really do see things bounce back pretty quickly there.
Well, and the president, as Aaron just punctuated just a second ago live right here on CBS News 24/7, seemed to think that that is exactly where we're headed. Kelly, I also want to ask you about the indirect impacts. What are you watching for, say, in the stock market?
Yes. So, of course, we've talked about investor confidence. Whenever there are questions, whether it be inflation, the job market, something to do with uncertainty, you often see that reflected in the market. Specifically with the shutdown, it could lead to less confidence by investors and consumers in the U.S. government. But historically, I went back, Reed, and I checked the data. The stock market always bounces back. And in fact, if you look most often after a government shutdown a year later, it is quite higher across the major indexes. The other thing that I'm looking for, which could have an ultimate impact on the stock market down the line when it comes to interest rates, the economic data that the government puts out. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they are going to put out the jobs report on Friday, but they have already said if there is a shutdown and it continues through Friday, they will not be releasing that data. Why does that matter other than what else am I doing on Friday, Reed, instead of talking to you about the jobs report? It matters because the Federal Reserve looks at that data at its next interest rate decision. And there is a possibility if they don't have that data, they might be more cautious or they could even delay that decision. And that would ultimately have an impact on the markets, Reed.
That data, a very important measuring stick for them to decide how far off we are from those interest rates being lowered. Kelly O'Grady, thank you so much.
I want to bring in Kristen Bringle. She is the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs at the National Parks Conservation Association. Ma'am, thanks for waiting while we wrapped up the president's speech there to those senior commanders. I know you've been on the docket for a while now. So let me just ask you, if the government does shut down, how would that impact national parks?
Essentially, national parks would not have any staff to run them. It would be essential staff only. And last time around during the shutdown, we saw a lot of vandalism, damage to parks, poaching of wildlife. And so we're really concerned about the effects of the shutdown on our national parks.
And during the 2018-2019 shutdown, the Trump administration did keep national parks accessible to the public without staff. Could that happen again? And what does that look like? And how difficult does it make it for the staff when inevitably the shutdown is over to come back to their jobs when people have been sort of going through those parks without any guidance from them?
Yeah, the main reason that we have our national parks is because we love these resources. We love these places that we go to visit, whether it's, the Arches in Arches National Park or waterfalls in Yosemite. And so people want these places well protected. What we saw last time was off-road vehicle damage throughout parks, vandalism, graffiti. Some buildings were broken into last time around. And so when you don't have enough staff to manage these national park units and you're still making them accessible to the public, damage can happen. And one of the most horrific things that happened last time around was someone chopped down part of a Joshua tree for firewood. And so when you don't have rangers, when you don't have the proper staff in our national parks, we see this damage that happens and there's no one to stop it. So we're worried about going into this shutdown, what could happen and how they're going to either allow or not allow the public into parks. But we really want to send a message to folks that we're all in this together and we want to protect these resources. And, and this is a tough time of year. This is October. It's actually a beautiful time of year to go to our national parks. So we know a lot of folks want to go there, about 1 million a day visit our national parks in October. And it contributes about $80 million to the economy per day. So we know people want to get into these places. We do too, but in a government shutdown, there's so few staff and so many possibilities for damage or people getting hurt that it just doesn't make sense to keep them open. We would prefer that they just close during a shutdown.
All right, really good advice. Kristen Bringle, thank you very much, and thank you for what you do. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Travelers likely won't feel the effects of a government shutdown right away, but the longer it takes for lawmakers to strike a deal, the costlier it will be for the industry. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve breaks down the potential issues by looking back at the last government shutdown.
The immediate impact for flyers at airports Wednesday and through the rest of the week probably limited. The concern comes if this shutdown stretches into weeks or longer, because based on what we saw in 2018, when we had a 35-day government shutdown starting in December, after that first missed paycheck, so about 2 weeks in, we started to see TSA sick calls really increase at airports across the country. That led to long lines, longer wait times at checkpoints. Some checkpoints had to be closed. And in one case in Miami, they even had to close an airport terminal, the entire terminal, because there weren't enough officers to staff the checkpoints. Now, TSA officers are not high-paid government workers, so missing a paycheck can have a profound impact. Air traffic controllers would also work without pay. In January of 2019, air traffic control sick calls resulted in significant disruptions to flights in the New York City area shortly before the shutdown ended. There is a shortage of controllers, and during a shutdown, hiring and training of new hires generally stops, slowing efforts to get more controllers on the job quickly. Amtrak receives federal funds but is operated as an independent entity. The railroad says service should continue as planned there. Travelers heading to national parks, they are likely to be in for disappointment. Most parks will close to the public during a shutdown. The U.S. Travel Association estimates the cost of a government shutdown to the U.S. travel economy to be about $1 billion a week. Back to you.